Ambassador Michael Johnson walked into the massive council chamber, his footsteps echoing against the crystal walls that stretched up toward a ceiling lost in swirling mists. The alien lights cast strange shadows across his face as he looked around at the hundreds of different creatures sitting in floating pods, on twisted metal seats, and some just hovering in the air itself. This was it. The moment humanity had been working toward for decades. Johnson carried a small device in his pocket that contained Earth's entire diplomatic proposal, written and rewritten by the smartest minds on the planet. 8 billion people back home were counting on him to secure humanity's place among the stars. The beings around him looked nothing like humans. Some had tentacles where arms should be, others were made of what looked like living metal, and a few seemed to be nothing more than glowing energy contained in glass suits. They had been ruling the galaxy since before humans discovered fire. To them, Earth was just another backwater planet full of primitive creatures who barely knew how to leave their own solar system. Johnson had spent 3 years learning their languages, their customs, their ways of thinking. He knew that most species who came before this council left with whatever scraps they were given, grateful to be acknowledged at all. But Johnson had not come here to beg. The Supreme Arbiter floated forward, a creature that looked like a living crystal sculpture with edges sharp enough to cut steel. Its voice rang through the chamber like breaking glass. "Human representative," it said, the word somehow forming in Johnson's mind rather than his ears. "Your species seeks recognition and trade privileges with the Galactic Council." Johnson nodded respectfully. "We seek partnership and mutual benefit, honored Arbiter." A sound rippled through the chamber that Johnson recognized as alien laughter. The Arbiter's crystal form pulsed with different colors. "Partnership? Your species has existed for less than a cosmic second. You have barely left your star system. What could you possibly offer beings who have mastered the laws of reality itself?" Johnson reached into his jacket and pulled out a small holographic projector. Images of Earth appeared in the air, cities full of life, art galleries, music concerts, children playing in parks, scientists working in laboratories, farmers growing food, and people of every color and background working together. "We offer something that seems to have been forgotten in your ancient halls," Johnson said quietly. "We offer hope, innovation, the willingness to dream of something better and work to make it real." The Arbiter's colors shifted to what Johnson had learned meant annoyance. "Dreams? Hope? These are the fantasies of young species. We deal in power, in order, in the maintenance of galactic stability." "And what has that brought you?" Johnson asked. "A galaxy where 847 species bow to your will not because they choose to, but because they fear what happens if they don't? Where entire civilizations spend centuries begging for basic rights? Where innovation dies because change threatens your control?" The chamber fell silent. Even the constant humming of alien technology seemed to pause. Johnson felt sweat gathering on his forehead, but he stood straight and kept his voice steady. "Humanity requests full membership in this council, with equal voting rights and unrestricted access to galactic trade networks. We offer our knowledge, our creativity, and our friendship freely. But we will not bow down and accept the scraps from your table." The Arbiter's crystal form blazed with red light. "Defiance," it declared. "The human shows defiance to the lawful authority of this council. The penalty for such arrogance is clear." Johnson felt a strange tingling in the air around him. His neural implant, hidden behind his left ear, was recording everything and sending it back to Earth in real time. Military command would see every second of what happened next. "This serves as an example to any species that forgets their place," the Arbiter announced. "Witness the fate of those who challenge the natural order." The molecular disruptor hummed to life, a weapon that could tear apart the very atoms that made up a living being. Johnson looked directly into the recording device hidden in the wall and spoke his final words. "Remember what they did here today." The beam struck him, and Ambassador Michael Johnson simply ceased to exist. The execution was broadcast across thousands of worlds as a warning. But back on Earth, 8 billion humans watched their representative die not as a beggar, but as someone who had stood up for what was right. And in secret military bunkers across human space, Admiral Jerome Washington was already activating protocols that had been waiting 30 years for this exact moment. The galaxy was about to learn that some species don't break when you try to crush them. They just get more dangerous. President Angela Davis was in a meeting about education funding when her security chief burst through the doors of the Oval Office. The look on his face told her everything she needed to know before he even spoke. Something terrible had happened. "Madam President, we need to get you to the Situation Room immediately," he said, his voice tight with controlled emotion. "Ambassador Johnson is dead." Davis felt the blood drain from her face. She had personally chosen Johnson for the diplomatic mission, had shaken his hand before he left Earth 6 months ago. He had been confident, determined, ready to represent humanity on the galactic stage. Now he was gone. The Situation Room was already filled with military leaders, intelligence officers, and cabinet members when Davis arrived. On the main screen, footage from Johnson's neural implant played on repeat. She watched her ambassador stand tall before the alien council, watched him refuse to accept humanity's place as a lesser species, watched him disappear in a flash of alien energy. How long ago? Davis asked quietly. 17 minutes, replied Admiral Jerome Washington, the head of Earth's deep space operations. The execution was broadcast live across the galaxy as a warning to other species. Davis closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, something had changed in her expression. The grief was still there, but it was now mixed with something much more dangerous. Jerome, she said, using the Admiral's first name for the first time in their professional relationship, tell me about the Annihilation Protocol. Washington nodded slowly. He had been waiting 30 years for someone to ask him that question. It's active as of 12 minutes ago, Madam President. Every system is coming online. The room fell silent. Most of the people present had heard rumors about secret military projects, but the Annihilation Protocol was beyond top secret. Only a handful of people knew it even existed. What exactly are we talking about here? Asked Secretary of Defense Patricia Williams. Washington walked to the main display and brought up a star map showing human territory. Red dots began appearing throughout the region, scattered across dozens of star systems. For the past 30 years, since our first contact with alien life, we've been preparing for the possibility that diplomacy might fail, Washington explained. Every mining station, research facility, and exploration vessel we've sent into deep space has had a secondary purpose. The red dots on the map began to pulse, and new information appeared next to each one. What looked like simple industrial facilities now showed weapon classifications, troop numbers, and military capabilities that should have been impossible for structures that size. Mining Station Alpha 7 isn't just extracting minerals from the asteroid belt, Washington continued. It's been manufacturing weapons and training soldiers for 23 years. Research vessel Explorer Prime hasn't been studying nebula formations. It's been testing new military technologies and mapping alien trade routes. Davis stared at the display in amazement. How many people are we talking about? Across all hidden facilities, approximately 2 million military personnel, Washington replied. All volunteers who understood they might spend decades in deep space, waiting for a war that might never come. They've been training, planning, and preparing this entire time. General Kevin Brown, head of Earth's Army, leaned forward in his chair. What kind of weapons are we talking about? Washington's expression grew grim. Technologies that make our regular military look like children playing with wooden swords. We've had 3 decades to study alien ship designs from intercepted communications. We've reverse-engineered their shields, their engines, their weapons systems. But we didn't stop there. The display changed to show technical diagrams of ships and weapons that looked nothing like standard human technology. We've built things the aliens have never seen before, Washington continued. Ships that can phase through solid matter. Weapons that manipulate time itself. AI systems that can rewrite alien computer networks faster than they can detect the intrusion. President Davis turned to face the room. Every person present understood that they were about to make a decision that would change human history forever. They killed our ambassador for asking to be treated as equals, she said, her voice carrying the weight of 8 billion people behind it. They broadcast his death across the galaxy as entertainment. They wanted to show the universe what happens when someone challenges their authority. She paused, looking each person in the room directly in the eyes. Admiral Washington, you have authorization to activate all protocols. Show them what happens when someone kills a human being. Washington saluted crisply. Yes, Madam President. Fleet commanders are standing by. Within minutes, encrypted messages were racing across human space at faster-than-light speeds. On mining stations and research vessels, in hidden military bases and camouflaged warships, 2 million people received the same simple message: Protocol Annihilation is now active. This is not a drill. The sleeping giant was awake, and it was very, very angry. Captain Lisa Thompson floated in the command chair of her stealth ship, watching the alien communication relay station through her viewscreen. The massive structure looked like a crystal flower blooming in space, its petals crackling with energy as it processed billions of messages across the galaxy every second. In 30 minutes, it would be nothing but scattered atoms. All ships, report status, Thompson whispered into her headset. Around her, the bridge crew worked in complete silence, their fingers dancing across control panels that made no sound. Everything on a stealth ship was designed to be invisible and quiet. Phantom Squadron ready, came the first reply. Ghost Squadron in position, followed another. One by one, 12 different captains reported their readiness. 12 ships, 12 targets, 12 communication hubs that kept the Galactic Council connected to their empire. Thompson had spent 2 years studying these stations, learning their schedules, their weak points, their backup systems. The aliens expected humanity to follow the ancient rules of war. First, you sent a formal declaration explaining your complaints. Then you gave the enemy time to prepare their defenses. After that, you fought honorably, ship to ship, until one side surrendered or was completely destroyed. It was civilized. It was predictable. It was stupid. Execute, Thompson said simply. 12 human ships fired simultaneously. Not at the stations themselves, but at tiny points where the main power conduits connected to the communication arrays. The aliens had shields that could stop planet-killing weapons, but they had never thought to protect simple wire connections. The relay stations died instantly. Across 12 star systems, the galaxy's communication network went dark. Alien commanders tried to contact their superiors and heard only silence. Military bases attempted to coordinate with each other and found nothing but static. In the space of 5 minutes, the Galactic Council had lost the ability to talk to most of their empire. While Thompson's fleet was cutting communication lines, Commander Kevin Brown was sitting in a room that looked more like a library than a military command center. Dozens of technicians sat at desks covered with screens, their fingers typing code faster than human eyes could follow. "We're in," announced Lieutenant Ashley Cooper from her workstation. "Their main database thinks I'm Admiral Zekthal requesting routine tactical updates." Brown smiled. The aliens had been so confident in their technological superiority that they had never considered the possibility of a cyber attack. Their computer systems were thousands of years old, powerful but predictable. Human artificial intelligence could rewrite their programming faster than they could detect it. "Download everything," Brown ordered. "Military positions, fleet movements, weapon specifications, political structures. I want to know which alien leaders hate each other and which ones are afraid of the dark." The information flowed into human computers like water through a broken dam. Battle plans that had taken alien military minds centuries to develop. Secret diplomatic communications revealing which species were unhappy with Council rule. Personal files containing the psychological profiles of every major alien leader. In 6 hours, humanity knew the Galactic Council better than the Council knew itself. The first alien counterattack came 36 hours later. A fleet of crystalline warships, each one the size of a city, jumped into human space near the mining colonies of the Tau Ceti system. The alien admiral, a being called Vorthak, had fought in dozens of wars over his 3,000-year lifetime. He knew how primitives fought, and he knew how to crush them. What he found instead made him question his own sanity. The human ships that rose to meet his fleet were unlike anything in the alien databases. They moved through space like ghosts, appearing and disappearing without warning. When Vorthak ordered his weapons fired, the energy beams passed right through the human vessels as if they weren't there. "Impossible," he muttered in his native language. "Matter cannot become incorporeal at will." The human ships fired back with weapons that defied every law of physics Vorthak understood. Some of his vessels aged decades in seconds, their hulls corroding and their systems failing as time itself was weaponized against them. Others simply stopped existing, not destroyed but edited out of reality by technology beyond alien comprehension. In 12 minutes, Vorthak's entire fleet was either destroyed or had surrendered. He sat alone in his command chamber, staring at the tactical display that showed human ships that shouldn't exist using weapons that couldn't work. A human voice spoke through his communication system, the words translated perfectly into his language. "Admiral Vorthak," the voice said calmly, "this is Captain Janet Rodriguez of the Earth Defense Force. Your fleet has been neutralized. You have 2 choices, surrender your ship and crew, or join your vessels in whatever comes next." Vorthak looked around his bridge at his surviving crew members. They stared back at him with expressions of total defeat. In 12 minutes, these primitive humans had destroyed everything he thought he knew about warfare. "We surrender," he said quietly. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out as human forces struck without warning and without mercy. The aliens had expected a conventional war fought by their rules. Instead, they got something entirely new. Humans who fought not to prove their honor, but to win at any cost. The council's military leaders gathered in emergency session, trying to understand what was happening. Their communication networks were destroyed. Their computer systems were compromised. Their fleets were disappearing faster than they could send them into battle. Supreme Arbiter Vextar stood before a tactical display showing the steady collapse of council military power. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "They are a primitive species. They barely understand space travel." "Perhaps," said his military advisor, "we have made an error in our assessment." The crystal being's form flickered with angry colors. "What do you mean?" "Perhaps they are not primitive at all. Perhaps they have been pretending to be weak while they prepared for this moment." The truth was finally beginning to dawn on the aliens. They had not killed a helpless ambassador. They had declared war on predators who had been studying them for 30 years, learning their weaknesses, and preparing for exactly this moment. The galaxy was about to learn that humans were very good at learning. And even better at teaching. Admiral Jerome Washington stood in the command center of the Earth Defense Force, staring at a holographic map of the galaxy that showed the steady collapse of alien civilization. Red dots marked destroyed council facilities, while blue lines showed the movement of human forces across star systems that had been under alien control for thousands of years. "Status report," Washington said to his staff. Major Keisha Williams stepped forward, her uniform crisp despite having been awake for 36 hours straight. "Phase 1 is complete, sir. All major communication hubs are offline. The Council can't coordinate their forces or even talk to most of their member worlds." Washington nodded. Without communication, an empire spanning 800 species was just a collection of isolated planets, each one wondering why their leaders had gone silent. "Phase 2, he asked. Colonel Damon Robinson moved to the tactical display, pointing to various locations across the galaxy. "Supply convoy raids are exceeding expectations, Admiral. We've hit 17 major shipping routes in the past week. The Council's member species are starting to run out of food, fuel, and medical supplies." Washington had learned something important during his decades of military planning. You didn't need to destroy an enemy's army if you could starve it first. The Galactic Council had grown comfortable ruling through fear, but fear meant nothing when your people were hungry and your ships couldn't fuel up for another battle. "Show me the Altarian system," Washington said. The holographic display zoomed in on a star system that contained 6 inhabited planets, all controlled by a species that looked like walking trees with crystalline bark. They had been among the Council's most loyal supporters, providing the exotic metals needed for alien weapons and ships. "The Altarians sent their entire fleet to attack our position near Proxima Centauri," Robinson explained. "While they were gone, Captain Monica Jefferson's stealth teams disabled every mining operation in their home system. No more rare metals for the Council's war machine." Washington smiled grimly. The aliens fought wars like they were playing chess, moving pieces around a board according to ancient rules that everyone understood. Humans fought wars like they were hunting dangerous animals, using whatever method worked best to bring down the prey. On the other side of the galaxy, the Council's military leaders were discovering just how effective human hunting methods could be. Admiral Korthvex, a being that resembled a massive insect with armor plating instead of skin, commanded what had once been the pride of the Council's navy, a fleet of 200 warships, each one capable of destroying entire planets. Now he was down to 43 ships, and he had no idea where the humans were. "Sensors show nothing, Admiral," reported his tactical officer. "Long-range scans are clear. There are no human vessels within 10 light-years of our position." Korthvex clicked his mandibles nervously. That meant nothing. Human ships could appear out of nowhere, strike with impossible weapons, and vanish before his crews could even return fire. In the past month, he had lost more ships to humans than he had lost in 3 centuries of conventional warfare. "Sir," called the communications officer, "we're receiving a message from the vegan defense fleet." "Put it through," Korthvex ordered. The voice that came through the speakers was filled with panic. "This is Admiral Zephyrin of the 3rd Battle Group. We're under attack by human forces. They're using some kind of time distortion weapon. My ships are aging years and seconds. We need immediate." The transmission cut off abruptly. Korthvex stared at the silent communication panel. The vegan system was over 50 light-years away. If humans were attacking there simultaneously, it meant they had forces spread across impossible distances, striking dozens of targets at once with perfect coordination. "Admiral," said his tactical officer quietly, "incoming transmission from the human forces." "On screen," Korthvex said, though he dreaded what he might hear. The face that appeared on the view screen belonged to a human woman with short gray hair and eyes that held no mercy. Admiral Korthvex, she said in perfect alien speech, this is Captain Denise Thompson of the Earth Defense Force. Your fleet has been marked for elimination.
Wait, Korthvex said desperately. We can negotiate.
The Council is willing to discuss terms. The time for discussion ended when you murdered our ambassador, Thompson replied coldly. You have 60 seconds to evacuate your crews to lifepods. After that, we remove you from existence. Korthvex looked around his bridge at his terrified crew members. These beings had ruled the galaxy for millennia, commanding respect and fear from hundreds of species. Now they were being given ultimatums by creatures they had considered primitive just months ago. All ships, he announced over the fleet communication system, abandon ship immediately. This is not a drill. 59 seconds later, Korthvex's flagship and the remaining 42 vessels in his fleet simply ceased to exist, edited out of reality by weapons technology that alien scientists insisted was impossible. Back on the Council's capital world, Supreme Arbiter Vextar floated in his crystal chamber, desperately trying to salvage what remained of his empire. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Fleets destroyed, supply lines severed, entire star systems going dark as their defenders disappeared without a trace. Send a message to the human homeworld, Vextar ordered his surviving communication staff. Tell them the Council is ready to negotiate peace terms. The reply came back within hours, broadcast on every frequency so that any surviving Council forces could hear it clearly. This is Admiral Jerome Washington of Earth, the human voice said with deadly calm. You executed our diplomat when he came to you seeking peaceful relations. You broadcast his death across the galaxy as entertainment. You wanted to show the universe what happens to species that dare to demand equality. The transmission paused, and when it resumed, Washington's voice carried the weight of 8 billion angry humans behind it. Now we're showing the universe what happens to species that murder diplomats. There will be no negotiations. There will be no peace talks. There will be no mercy. You wanted to judge humanity. Now humanity judges you. Across the galaxy, alien species that had served the Council for thousands of years began to understand a terrible truth. The hunters had become the hunted, and their new predators were absolutely relentless. The age of the Galactic Council was ending, and the age of humanity had begun. The war officially ended on a Tuesday morning when the last Council stronghold went silent. Admiral Jerome Washington sat in his command center, watching the final red dot disappear from the Galactic Tactical Display. After 18 months of systematic warfare, the Galactic Council no longer existed as a functioning government. Around the galaxy, billions of alien beings waited in their homes, expecting the worst. History had taught them that when one empire fell, another took its place through conquest and domination. The survivors usually faced slavery, forced labor, or complete extermination. It was the way of galactic politics, as natural as the rotation of planets around their suns. What they got instead surprised everyone. The first sign that humanity was different came when President Angela Davis announced that all human military forces would be pulling back to defensive positions. No occupation troops would be stationed on alien worlds. No tribute would be demanded. No populations would be relocated or enslaved. On the former Council capital world, Supreme Arbiter Vextar floated in what remained of his crystal chamber, most of his governmental complex reduced to rubble around him. He had expected human soldiers to burst through his doors at any moment, dragging him away to face execution or imprisonment. Instead, a single human woman walked calmly into his chamber. She wore the uniform of the Earth Diplomatic Corps, not the battle armor of a conquering army. Supreme Arbiter Vextar, she said politely, I am Ambassador Patricia Williams. I've come to discuss the transition of governmental authority. Vextar's crystal form flickered with confusion. You have destroyed our military, crippled our infrastructure, and dissolved our government. What is there to discuss? Williams sat down in a chair that someone had thoughtfully provided for her comfort. What happens next? You see, humanity didn't fight this war to replace the Council with another empire. We fought it to end the concept of empire altogether. I don't understand, Vextar admitted. The galaxy has been ruled by fear for thousands of years, Williams explained. Strong species dominated weak ones. Advanced civilizations treated primitive ones as property. We're offering something different, a partnership where every species gets a voice, regardless of their technology level or military strength. Vextar stared at her in disbelief. You would give up the power you have earned through conquest. We never wanted power, Williams replied. We wanted justice. There's a difference. Across the galaxy, Similar conversations were taking place as human diplomatic teams met with the leaders of former council species. The message was always the same: the age of domination was over, and the age of cooperation was beginning. The construction of the memorial station took 6 months. It was built at the exact coordinates where Ambassador Michael Johnson had been executed, using materials donated by dozens of different species who wanted to participate in creating something new. The station was beautiful in its simplicity. A sphere of gleaming metal and crystal, it rotated slowly in space, catching the light of nearby stars. At its center was a massive chamber where representatives from every known species could gather to discuss matters of mutual concern. Johnson's final words were carved into the main entrance in over 800 different languages: "We came seeking partnership, not servitude." President Davis stood in that central chamber 6 months later, looking out at the assembled representatives of what had once been the galaxy's most powerful empire. Some were old enemies who had fought humanity with desperate courage. Others were former slaves who had served the Council for millennia. All of them were now equals in the new Terran alliance. "My fellow beings," Davis began, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber, 18 months ago, you executed our ambassador for the crime of asking to be treated with respect. Today, I stand before you not as a conqueror, but as a partner." The chamber was completely silent. Many of the alien representatives had never heard such words from a position of power. "Humanity could have chosen revenge," Davis continued. "We could have enslaved you as you enslaved others. We could have destroyed your worlds as you threatened to destroy ours. But that would have made us no better than those we fought against." She gestured to the memorial wall behind her, where Johnson's image was preserved in holographic crystal. "Our ambassador died because he believed that all intelligent species deserved dignity and respect. His death was not meaningless if we can build something better from the ashes of what came before." Davis paused, looking directly at several alien representatives who had once been her enemies. "This alliance is not the human empire with a different name. It is a true partnership where decisions are made by consensus, where disputes are resolved through discussion rather than warfare, and where no species can dominate another through force." She held up a document that had been translated into every known language. "This is the Alliance Charter. It establishes a government based on equality, cooperation, and mutual respect. Every species that signs it gets an equal voice in galactic affairs, regardless of their military strength or technological advancement." An alien being that looked like a walking tree raised one of its branch-like arms. "And if we refuse to sign?" it asked in a voice like rustling leaves. Davis smiled. "Then you remain independent, and we respect that choice. The Alliance will trade with you, communicate with you, and defend you if you're attacked, but we will not force you to join us." The age of forced compliance ended with the Council. Over the following weeks, representatives returned to their homeworlds to discuss the Alliance Charter with their people. Some signed immediately, grateful to finally have a voice in galactic affairs. Others took months to decide, suspicious of any offer that seemed too good to be true. But slowly, steadily, the new order took shape. The memorial station became the bustling capital of a government unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Decisions were made by committees where humans sat beside former enemies, working together to solve problems that affected everyone. Trade routes reopened under Alliance protection. Scientific knowledge was shared freely between species that had once been forbidden to communicate. Art, music, and literature flowed between worlds that had been isolated for centuries. The galaxy learned something important in those early days of the Alliance: sometimes the most dangerous species is indeed the one you underestimate. But more importantly, they learned that the most merciful species is often the one you wrong. Humanity had taken the worst the galaxy could offer and turned it into an opportunity to build something better. They had proven that strength without wisdom was worthless, and that true power came from lifting others up rather than tearing them down. The age of the Galactic Council was over. The age of partnership had begun.